Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Échale Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Quintero. Y el día de hoy, I'm really excited to have him back because he was on the podcast back when it was called Salud Podcast. But I'm excited to bring back Moris, one of my fraternity brothers, and also like an expert in everything that there is to know about, like, well, my expert. I know you're an expert on like finance y todo ese rollo. Pero how are you?
Good. Happy to be back. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but definitely I would say that I wish to be. At least I'm starting to get to that point where I'm trying to learn as much as I can. But assist those around me. But yeah, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and speak for myself, and I'm probably going to speak for everybody that's in the Financial Predator, which is your private group on Instagram, that we've all benefited. We've kind of formed like a little community, and we've all passed resource and knowledge back to each other, to each other. And there's no gatekeeping, which is amazing to see. And any questions that we all have, somebody for sure has the answer or will research the answer like yourself. So I appreciate that. And I'm pretty sure everybody in that group chat appreciates it. Entonces, gracias por eso.
No, you're welcome. It's like something I wanted to do, just create a group where people could find out the ideas or get their questions answered without having to go through pay for any kind of paywall for groups or these kind of universities that are popping up online and on Discord. So I wanted just to create a small community for free for people to just ask questions. And if I have the answer, I'll try to respond it. If someone else has it, then they will share their experience as well. And yeah, I mean, it's like a tit for tat. We all help each other there.
Yeah, no, realmente sí, para eso es. So for today's podcast, I definitely want to go ahead and talk about the stock market. I want to talk about cryptocurrency. I want to talk about the housing market 2023 and obviously what this week has in store for us, just because I feel like it is a very important week, as you've been mentioning for like the past couple months. But before we get started into that, I want to get to know you a little bit better. I know we've talked about it in previous podcast, but I want to get the people that are listening an opportunity to get to know El Salvadorian dentro de ti. So you grew up in El Salvador. You migrated to the United States at what age?
Yeah, I was 10. I was 10 when I moved when I moved for the first time to Long Beach, California.
Do you have any recollection of El Salvador y viniendo a los Estados Unidos?
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember when we were coming, like there was a lot of issues in El Salvador. My parents, they just recently had lost the house. Well, not lost the house, but they were selling it because we couldn't finish paying for it. So, it was like either we sell what we have because we're not going to make payments and move, or take it and you become homeless, kind of that same idea. So both of the companies where my parents worked, they closed, they went bankrupt. So they all of a sudden, both at the same time, they went through a recession. The El Salvador as a country went through a deep depression during the early 2000s, and that led to a lot of companies closing. So my parents were like, well, let's find a better future. And I remember my parents told me before we were coming in that we were just going to come and visit Disneyland. That was the promise that they gave us in Moria. That was the reason they said like we were going to come and visit the United States. We're going to go to Disneyland and meet Mickey and hang out with the cast of Toy Story. And that was because I was a big Toy Story fan as a kid. I had the movies in DVD and in VHS at that time. And we're like, yeah, we were happy. Like, see, Disneyland, vamos a ir a ver a Disney, a Mickey. And we got on. I noticed that my parents put a lot of our clothes. Like, we were supposed to just be here for 2 weeks.
Wow.
But we had clothes for, a whole month. So we're like, oh, that's surprising. We're going to have lots of clothes. And they brought a bunch of stuff that they had and a bunch, like it was lots of baggage. So Yeah, we went through, the airport and immigration process. And when they asked us, where we're coming, we're like, oh yeah, we're going to Disney, going to Disney. Little did we know that after the 2 weeks that this was going to be a permanent thing. Like my parents had already sold the house. They had gotten, all the cash while we were the first week that we were here in the United States. And basically, they were like, well, we're staying here and we're leaving, and we're basically going to become Americans or immigrants in a way, pretty much.
Was there any like pushback from you? And do you have any siblings, older, younger?
Yeah, I have one. So his name is Carlos. He's a younger sibling. And I mean, for both of us in the beginning, it was like, it was just rosy because we were visiting a whole new country. The first 2 weeks were amazing. We went to Disneyland. We explored LA. We went to downtown LA to look at the stars, the Walk of Fame, and we went through, what's the name? The Hollywood, to do all the Hollywood stuff.
Yeah.
So we did all all the touristy kind of things. We got on the bus to go on the Hollywood tours and do those things. So yeah, I mean, in the beginning it was fun, but then, after 2 weeks, we were like, okay, Mom, we're ready to go, because we were staying at my uncle's.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we were staying at my uncle's, and he my mom said like, oh no, we are not going back. And that's when, in a way, we found out that we were going to stay here at least for the long term.
Okay, but you guys didn't say like, yo, I'm done with the United States. Ya me quiero regresar. I already want to go back.
In a way, I guess the biggest thing and the biggest issue that we did experience was the language barrier. Like having a conversation with our cousins, that were not really, really our blood cousins. They were cousins by family friends, So my uncle is, at least the uncle that we had at the time, because we're estranged now. We're separated because of a lot of family issues that were back in the day.
Typically,
but he was, basically. So he was the cousin of my mom's cousin. So it was like almost second removed cousins. And in Latin countries, we called everybody that's somewhat related an uncle or a primo or familia.
Dang. Okay, that's interesting. And then when your parents arrived here in the United States, you guys came in on visas, or how was that? Because I know for a lot of families, migrating to the United States, obviamente it gets complicated nowadays. And back in the days, was it easier?
I guess it was easier. We came through a visa, so we had permission to be here. We had permission to visit as tourists and stay here for a max 6 months. I think that was the limit for any tourist coming from El Salvador to stay as a tourist. But of course we overstayed. But of course, back in the day, there was like no follow up. They were not taking your fingerprints. They were not putting you in a database as a tourist database where they would have to find out and call back the point of contact that you put in your tourist visa. So in a way, it was easy to kind of overstay back in the early 2000s.
So when you were growing up, when did you realize like, oh, this was an issue that you didn't have legal status? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. No, I mean, in the beginning, we didn't know. Of course, our parents, kept us in the dark with that. We had no idea that we were undocumented. The main thing that taught me or that showed me that I was, at least here undocumented was when I started applying for scholarships in high school. And that's when, I was selected by my high school to be one of the applicants for the Bill Gates scholarship. And it's, yeah. So it was one of those scholarships where if you were a 4.0 student or a very good student, you could apply to, because not many people get approved for it. So at least my high school, my counselor put me in the list, and they checked all the qualifications for the students, and they saw that my grades fit and I could have been a good candidate for these scholarships. So my counselor called me in. She told me to come through, and gave me kind of like the 411 of what it is and what I needed to turn in. And of course, when she asked me like, oh, what's your social security? That's when I realized, I never heard of that before. So that's when I went to my parents and I told them, hey, you know what's my social security? Because they're signing me up for this scholarship that's supposed to pay for all my schooling. And, you know, they sat me down and they sat my brother down with me too, because he was going to be a high school student next year. So he's 4 years younger than me. So pretty much I was a senior. He was barely a freshman coming into high school. So they sat me down and they said, you know, kids, you know, you don't have a social security. So we cannot really apply for those kind of scholarships. So at least you cannot apply for those scholarships. We need to find another way to pay for school. So I had to go to my counselors and tell them, you know, I don't have a social security. And of course, after that, they were like, oh, yeah, you can no longer apply or be selected to be a Bill Gates student. So it was tough. And then the years after that, you know, more stuff came out like, oh, you cannot go here, you cannot go there, you cannot travel. And later on, you know, it became like, oh, yeah, I'm definitely here without any kind of protection or permission.
Yeah. Did you ever start feeling some type of fear? Because I'm assuming you had also applied via DACA, ¿verdad?
Yeah. So at that time, of course, there was no DACA back in the day. So I think DACA became a thing when I was already in college. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was an AB 540 student. So that was where a student that could apply to a college as an in-state student, but there was no financial aid with that. You had to find your own financial backing or your own money to pay for school. And that's basically what I did. I applied to as many private scholarships that did not require a social security as I could. I applied to many. And of course, my parents also took loans for me to go to college. So they got themselves in debt for me and for my brother too. So it was a hardship. It was definitely a little scary because of course, my parents couldn't drive and they were driving. They were not supposed to, but they were driving. So there was always that fear of like, if we get caught, it's over for us.
Wow. No, I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, te das cuenta the struggles that people go through that are undocumented, that are on DACA, the realization as a child that like, oh, you know what? I don't have the same privileges, but why am I being treated so differently by society if I'm doing everything by the books? I mean, you're 4.0. Your counselors were even like, yo, you're a perfect candidate for the Bill Gates scholarship. And obviously back in the day, there was not that many resources como las hay ahora. Now, did you go to community college first or straight into Cal State Long Beach?
Yeah, I went straight to Cal State Long Beach just mainly because back in the day also, they had this thing saying that if you were a Long Beach citizen or Long Beach resident, like you reside in the city of Long Beach, you would get the first semester for free. So
okay, like a promise.
Yeah, it was basically the Long Beach promise. So they already had it back in the day. So I think the second year where that was already in place. So I was like, you know what? At least I'll get 6 months of free schooling, if anything. I'll get some free 6 months. So that was my thought as a high school student. And I applied. Of course, I applied to many other schools. I applied to UCLA, UCI. I got into all of them. But then when I saw the prices, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stick to Long Beach. I'm gonna stick to Long Beach. So
how much annually?
Annually, like, I think
versus like Long Beach, so just so people can get an idea. You had to pay for, and especially with a lot of students who are DACA undocumented and don't have these privileges to have to pay for.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing the numbers and doing the comparisons, and I saw the CSULB, at least at that time, I don't know how it is now because of inflation and the huge increase in tuition. But back then in 2009, it was around $6,000 a year.
Yeah. Okay. Similar to Cal State San Bernardino. Because we entered the same. I just realized we entered the same year, 2009.
Yeah. We're both, I think, 31, 32. Oh, my cat's out here.
He wasn't my God. Pero, ¿qué te iba a decir? And versus UCLA, because it's funny, I got accepted into Berkeley and I got accepted into UCR, but Cal State San Bernardino was just so much closer and I just didn't want to go far. But I remember like looking at even UCR, which was about the same distance as CSUSB, it was about another 15 grand more just because it's a UC. And then I can only imagine UCLA, USC with the prestige that they have.
Yeah, no, I think they were about the same. I feel like UCLA maybe had a little bit more of a price tag just because they do have the research aspect to them and the big donations they get from all their sports and stuff like that. So I think UCLA goes around at that time back in 2009, they were going for around 20,000 a year. So yeah, big difference compared 6,000 to 20,000.
Yeah. So I have a friend who was also on DACA. Ya ahora se arregló sus papeles. But I remember I didn't understand why she was working 14 hours a day in a restaurant, why she was overloading with credits, because obviously you can take as many credits because the same tuition applies. Like once you take 12 plus units, it's the same price tag. So she was always overloading. And I'm like, why are you doing like so much? I'm over here chilling, taking 3-4 classes. Obviously, I had to play catch up when it came towards the end of my year. But she ended up graduating in 3 years. And then I realized, well, she's like, for me, it was a race against time and money. I needed to graduate as fast as I could in something that I liked, which she majored in Spanish and business. But also because if I added another year, that's another, like, I don't know, $8,000 to my bill.
Yeah.
You know, same for you. Were you also like a race against time?
Yeah, basically I was, in the beginning I did felt it because I was taking, I would say 6-7 classes a semester, which is not recommended for any career. So yeah, in the beginning, of course, I noticed that if I was taking 6 classes a semester, I would notice my grades were suffering. And so then it was that either I finish fast and get my grades up, or have really low grades, or take it slower and have better grades. So I guess what helped me realize that is having a semester where I failed a lot of classes. Even though the first semester I failed almost all my classes. I failed calculus, physics. Yeah, and I took as many classes as I could because I needed to get it done quick, right? So
and you never.
Oh, what was that?
You never changed your major?
Oh, no. So I kept the same major. So I entered as an engineer, a computer science engineer. And I stayed the same for the whole, I actually went 5 years for my degree. So I stayed an extra year because of the mess ups I did in my first semester and my second semester, which, I was trying to get as much stuff done. So if I would have taken it slower, I would have maybe got it done in time. But, yeah, so I had to lower, at least pace myself later on. But for sure, it was a little bit of a pressure to get that done as soon as possible because my parents were getting in debt. I didn't have enough money. And, prices kept going up year by year. They were raising. I think that time they were starting to raise the prices of tuition almost like 200, 300, 400 a semester. Yeah. So it was starting to get added.
I think that is a privilege that we don't understand or we don't realize when we're going in college. Just the privilege to change our major. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who are undocumented probably did change their major, but they did it a lot more aware that like, hey, I need to do it strategically. Will these units roll over to this major? What will affect me? What will not affect me? Because I changed my major 5 times. I didn't really have to worry about financial aid. I'm sure for someone like you, if you wanted to change your major, you'd have to be like, well, I've already taken a year of computer engineering classes. Yeah. Like, what's going to happen if all of a sudden I do biology? That means I paid for these classes for nothing versus me that I went from chemistry to theater to communication. Those were all extra units. And I didn't, like, uno no capta ese privilegio que tiene. So kudos to you. How was that financial burden on yourself? Because it was for 5 years as opposed to people who try to finish it fast.
Yeah, in a way, it did weigh on me, especially when I noticed that my parents were also suffering because they were paying high interest rates. Because the loans that they got, because I couldn't apply to most loans at that time either. I had to get a private loan from a private bank, like Bank of America, and that's what my parents did. So they got a personal loan at an interest rate at that time, maybe around 6-7% of about 20,000, and that helped me pay at least for 2-3 years of college, and the rest I paid it with scholarships that I had. I got 1,000 here, 500 there, another 1,000 there. So I think I ended up getting almost a whole semester paid in scholarships, and then DACA came in, and that's when my parents they could start paying off the debt, avoid getting any more debts. And then DACA was helping me finish the last year of college. So the last year of college, that's when DACA got approved and I could apply and get the scholarships from the California, call grants, I think.
Oh, yeah.
The call grants at the time.
Is that when you joined the fraternity, the last year in college?
Yeah, that's when, I was like, okay, now I can take it easy. Now I'm in a way protected. I have some cash that the state is giving me. I don't have to work, because I worked a lot. In the beginning, I worked as a painter. Then I worked once I got some knowledge, and we had a family friend that worked in the Long Beach Unified School District. She was able to get me, as an engineering major, a math tutoring job in the Long Beach Unified School District. So I could go to schools and tutoring in math for any student that needed to stay extra hours. It was a program some schools had where you could be a tutor for 2 hours after school ended, and they would come to you, and you could get paid at least minimum. Because in painting, you don't get paid minimum. You get paid for the amount of work you do, and it all depends on how hard you work.
Wow. Now let's start getting into the money, because with those $20,000 that your mom and dad took out, I'm pretty sure they're not like the student loans that I got, where it's like, oh, your interest doesn't start occurring until 6 months after you graduate.
Correct.
It probably started occurring since the moment they pulled out the loan. So that $20,000 loan in 2-3 years, how big did it grow?
Oh, it grew. I would say they tried, of course, to pay it as fast as they could, but they couldn't, because, of course, interest rates in a personal loan start the month you take it off. So the moment you take it, the interest starts. So it doesn't matter if you don't get a job, like with, I think they say once you graduate, 6 months, they give you 6 months for you to start getting a job, and then you start paying off the debt. So, with personal loans, you have to start right away. So it started to grow, especially back then. My parents didn't work too much, or didn't make too much. They worked a lot, but they didn't make too much. My mom worked in cleaning, and my dad worked in a factory. So it was like they did minimum, pretty much. They did minimum back in the day. So that became really expensive on them. Of course, it weighted a lot on our quality of life. So we couldn't do anything aside from, having the occasional celebration with a cake for Christmas or for birthdays. That was our main celebrations back in the day. But now things have changed, of course. So they were able to pay it off, because now they don't have to worry about me. I helped them pay it off too. I tried as much to provide them with the easy of a life as possible now. So I helped them with some expenses, with some of the stuff. Now they're in a good spot. My dad works a really good job where he gets paid a good amount, and my mom doesn't even have to job anymore. Doesn't have to work anymore, because we are grown ups, and my brother works and I work. So in the end, we pretty much we are in a way there from our parents now.
Yeah, now you're getting to realize, like, wow, the American dream that people talk about. But I'm sure, like, because of all these money wounds, you became a product of your environment. You saw how interest rate affects your family, how it affected you, how money literally affected you as an undocumented individual. So when did you start getting into this fascination of money? Because obviously you're really great at math because you're an engineering major, you tutored it. But when did you start realizing like, oh my God, I can understand money? Because numbers are easy to understand. Money and science, STEM stuff, that blows my mind.
It's very interesting, actually. I did not start with math as a way to get into cryptocurrencies and stocks. It began with my fascination in sports, actually. We used to play fantasy sports with my friends in college. And one of the biggest things that you have to do when you're in fantasy is look at the stats of the player. So you look at the player, you look at their stats, you look at their projections, you look at their growth, you look at their what other people say about the player, and then you start creating an idea or a profile on this player where, okay, this guy, if I get him now when he's young, 21, by the time he's 27, 26 in his prime, he's going to be one of our superstars. And in a way, that kind of research and going into and using my math as well, looking at players, it was the same way I apply it to stocks nowadays. It's like, is this a good company to buy? And that's what got me into stocks, actually, understanding how to judge a player by their performance. Moved into judging stocks and cryptocurrencies by their performance. And it just transferred it really easily. And of course, with the background in engineering and knowing how to look at numbers in paper and stuff like that, that also helped a lot. Knowing things.
What was your first contact with the stock market? Was it stocks? Was it crypto? And who presented you with that resource?
Yeah, I guess this also comes with being exposed to engineering and technology in college. The first ever contact I had with cryptocurrencies and stocks was in college. And it was because one of our teachers, he was not a cryptographic, but he was into security. And he started talking about cryptocurrencies and the way they're secured and distributed systems. And then all of us in the class started looking at cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then we can start putting some money, because he already had some money. Our teacher already had some money in it. So he said, you guys can invest in them too. And we started investing in them back in 2017. We started buying, with some of my friends, started buying Bitcoin, Ethereum. Of course, not a whole Bitcoin because we were college students, but we were buying $10 here, $10 there, kind of average dollar cost average your way into it.
Bitcoin back then.
Yes, definitely. Now it's coming back down, but yeah.
And that, well, I mean, give it another 10 grand, and maybe it was back when you started buying it, you know. But I'm pretty sure you got Bitcoin if $10 and it was worth what? Maybe not even 1,000.
Yeah, no, it was a little bit over 6,000, 7,000 at the time in 2017, and then it grew to 20,000, and then it crashed again in 2018. So it's like a roller coaster with cryptocurrencies. You're always gonna have that euphoria moment where they're gonna be insanely valuable and people are gonna be going in like crazy. And that's when, the end is coming and everything's going to come back down.
So when did you start realizing, or how much of did you put into crypto before you sold?
Before I sold, it was back in 2017 or like recently?
No, back in 2017. I'm sure like as a student, you already had, I don't know, maybe a couple $100 in Bitcoin. Your average was probably like, I don't know, maybe like 11,000.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
So, I'm from you.
No, I think you got this right. You pretty much know most of this stuff. So in a way, I would say I had a few grand, because I started buying heavily because, at that time 2017, I was already working, and I already had graduated. So I was doing my master's at the time. So at that time I was doing my master's, and that's when my master professor of securities in distributed systems, he told us about crypto. So at that time I started to put 100 every month into Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I started with those two only because those two were the more secure and the only ones that you could actually kind of see some good trajectory and history in them. And so I started with 100 a month on Bitcoin and 100 on Ethereum. And little by little, it grew to a few thousand. And by the time it was 2018, which was the early days of 2018, when we saw the all-time high at the time, everything, I mean, I maybe had like a few $5,000 out of a initial investment of like close to $2,000. So it almost doubled.
Yeah, it almost doubled. That's amazing. And then when did you start? So right there, were you just dabbling in crypto, or were you already dabbling in stocks?
Yeah, at that time, that's when I opened my first account in stocks brokerage accounts. That was my first time I opened Robinhood. Actually, I opened Robinhood back in those days, and it was just new at that time. No one was doing what Robinhood was doing at the time, which is, fractional shares. Buy one stock of $1 and they'll give you a stock for free if you invited someone. That was unheard of back in the day. It was the first company to do it. And that's when I began. I remember my first stock that I got for free was the Zynga stock. I don't know if like the mobile game thing.
Yeah.
And that was the first ever stock I ever got for free. And I started buying $1 of Apple here and there, $1 of Google here and there. And those were the technology stocks were the only ones that I was buying back in the day, but it was cheap. I was starting to go $1. Mostly I was putting it in crypto, which maybe I should have been more selective in crypto and put more in stocks back in the day. But in the end, it worked out because recently I was able to sell at a gain from what was back then a loss. Now it became, in the last few months, it was definitely a better position.
Yeah. So when the 2018, I guess, crypto crash happened, because that's when you said it started to collapse, did you worry and sell, or did you already have this whole notion of like, diamond hands, which diamond hands are?
Basically, diamond hands is when you don't sell, you hold on to your life. There's like this little saying in crypto, you hodl, and it's because somebody mistyped it, and it pretty much means hold on for dear life. So you gotta have diamond hands with those cryptocurrencies. But I mean, during those days, I mean, I was, I put 1,000, 2,000. Now those 2,000 are 1,000, and it was 4,000 at one point. I'm just gonna not sell now at a loss and wait it for the long term, see what it does, and maybe something changes, of course. So I left it. I had all my money in Coinbase and Binance at the time, which I mean, at that time they were not that risky compared to how they are now. They're actually very risky. But yeah, I mean, I didn't worry it since it wasn't too much money. I didn't miss it. That's another thing. I try to put any money that was just extra money that I didn't need to buy or live off of. It was just, spending money that I didn't want to spend. I wanted to put it to work, if anything. So that's what I did. And, I said, I hold, see what happens. And if by the end of 2020, 2022, which was 4 years after I had bought them, I'll sell if things don't come back up.
When did you sell?
Yeah, I actually sold a lot. I would say starting when I saw Bitcoin come back down just a few months ago from 50,000 to 30,000. That's when, at 28, I liquidated everything. So I at least had a good doubled in my initial investment, plus some of the money that I had put back in. And then some of it was also at a loss, because I did start buying a lot more in the 40s and 50s. But then, I was still up. So I sold, got capital gains loss. I had to pay for those. And, in a way it was okay. I needed to get out just because I do see some weaknesses in crypto in the future, as well as the stock market, at least if things continue the way that they are. So I wanted just to play it safe. And while I'm still up, sell and wait for the best time to buy again.
Yeah. And then with that money, was that what allowed you to buy the home?
Yeah. No, actually, I sold almost, I would say, 80% of my portfolio back last year in 2021, at the end of last year, to buy the home that I'm living now. So yeah, it helped buy the home, put it as a down payment and make payments on it and renovate it a little bit.
Question. So you didn't have to, did you put down 3.5% on the home? Did you put down 20% of the home? Like, how much money are we talking about?
Yeah, no, I put 5% because I got a conventional loan, which is it's a little bit lower in interest rates, and its qualifications are a little bit less demanding. For an FHA, which is the one you're mentioning, which is the 2.5 APR, you needed, to make a certain amount of money, which I was no longer. I was above that threshold, and you get a higher interest rates. So it's actually a little bit more expensive for whoever gets it. But in the end, buying a home is still a good investment.
Yeah.
But I got 5%. I put around 40,000 of the money that I had in that I sold in stocks and in my 401k. And then I had some extra other money that I had, which I used to do some painting. So we repainted the house from the inside, replaced carpets to vinyl flooring. Also updated some of the piping because some of the piping was pretty old. So I tried to buy a good value home, which was going to be a fixer upper. So I got it for lower than what it was worth at the time. But now it's worth a lot more just because of the changes.
Yeah. So when you're first starting to buy a home, how is that conversation with your parents? Are you guys already living in a home? Are you guys renting out? And here comes their son. I'm ready to buy a home. Are they like, ¿de dónde tienes ese dinero? Where's it coming from? Like, are they curious?
They were definitely curious. One thing I guess pushed me to start looking for a home was because my parents were at that time living in a Section 8 housing. So all our lives we lived in Section 8 housings. Like, thank God for that, because it lowered our monthly rate when we were younger. But of course, at that time, my parents were making above the threshold of Section 8. I was making a lot more money because I was an engineer, and I couldn't live with them anymore, because if I would live with them, they would be way over the tipping point for Section 8 housing. So they were told in the last, I think it was 2018 or 2020. In 2020, they were told either you move, or we're going to have to evict you because you are way past the threshold of living in a Section 8 housing. So, I told my parents, well, I've been investing and I've been buying.
Hey, I have a little thing going on.
I have a little thing going on here. And, you guys, I could find a home for all of us, because I was renting already with my girlfriend. So I lived with my girlfriend. And we were paying close to $2,000 in Long Beach. That's, kind of like the standard for a 1-bedroom studio in downtown of Long Beach. So I was paying $2,000 a month. My parents, because it was Section 8 housing, were paying another $1,000 a month. So in a way, it was already, we can come together. I could pay the down payment for the home, and we all live in one home. And we just split the mortgage in half, my parents and I, with my brother. So that's what we did. I found a home. I sold my investments. And of course, they were surprised, because they had no idea that you could make, at least you can make money with cryptocurrencies or stocks or stuff like that. That is something, that as an immigrant, they don't really teach you. You come from another country that you have no idea how the economy and financials work in. And how you can actually make money in investing in the U.S. So that was one of the things that slowly I've been teaching them. So they opened their 401k I helped them set it up. I helped them set up their savings accounts with the IRA, so the Roth IRAs. And now with their jobs, they're able to at least live a little bit more comfortable. So having that knowledge and explaining it to them and giving it to them. And now I'm teaching my mom how to use TikTok and try to see if she can become a little bit more famous and start making money through that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the dream for everybody. So did you and your dad start looking for a house, or was it all you and the house? Is it under both your names, or is it yours?
Yeah, so it was me looking for the house. So I did most of the home touring. My parents sometimes came with me, and they gave it their opinion. But of course, it was up to me to decide, since I was going to pull the trigger in the end. For sure, I wanted to get a home that would fit all of us. So I was able to find one in Long Beach, not the cheapest, but also not that bad for what we got in a city like Long Beach. So it was definitely a diamond in the rough to be able to find it at that price and for the size. And Yeah, it was mostly just me putting it in, and then I bought it and it's in my name. Of course, I want to make it both my parents' name, because in the end, I believe it will be, this home will be my parents' home.
Yeah.
Um, because I want to just move out and go to another state, and that's what we're planning with my girlfriend. So we are gonna be moving out of here pretty soon, and my parents will be the ones taking care of the house. I will be still paying, and of course, the goal is to get my side of the home rented out, and that also becomes part of my parents'
Additional income.
additional income, and they will
How
hopefully retire soon.
how is that? Was that ever a burden? I feel like it's a burden, and not a burden we don't mind carrying. Like looking after our parents and making sure that they're okay. Because here where I live, my parents bought this house in 1996. I don't think not knowing, the possibilities or the importance of having a house. Because, I mean, we lived in LA for such a long time. My aunts and uncles, they lived in apartments all the time. And we were kind of forced to move to the Inland Empire because of my dad's job, because at some point he was commuting 40 minutes, and it was like, hey, there's this opportunity to buy a home and it's half an acre. And now in retrospect, you think like, whoa, that's huge. And we built ADUs, or we have additional ADUs. But at the end of the day, like now they live in Mexico, they come and go, but that additional income from the ADUs is for them. But we still have to carry the responsibility to make sure that they're okay. Any damages that need to be done, any repairs that need to be done, like we have to handle them. Did you, or do you feel any type of, I don't want to call it even burden, but like sense of responsibility to take care of your parents and make sure they're okay in the longevity aspect of it?
It is definitely something that I wanted to do, because I saw, my parents suffer. And at least from what they did, coming to another country, that they had no idea if they were gonna make it. It was like a shot in the dark if they could like make a living here. And once I was able to do it and have the privilege of being able to support my parents in that way, that's when I decided to, even if it's a burden, even if it costs me a little bit, even if it sets me back a couple years in my own plan, I want to do it for them, just because they did it for me when I was young, when I was in college. They took the burden of getting these personal loans to get me through school. And same thing with my brother. They tried their best to get him out, to go to school. And it was, for me, was mostly like, I had to do it. Then like, should I do it? Because there was no one else that could have done it for them. So I decided to be the one that would like be supporting them, at least in their older years.
Yeah,
but definitely it takes a little bit of I would say,
because it is tough. Our life on hold, to a certain extent, because I mean, at the end of the day, you set the foundation for them, and that ADU that you build. And I've been to your house, and it's beautiful, literally beautiful. You guys just redesigned in the back, is going to definitely provide for extra income. And then just setting up a 401k and IRA for them. I mean, not a lot of people know the importance of having one and why this should set one up. So if you could please just go into the importance of the Roth IRA, RIA, and a 401k, the difference and the importance of both.
Correct. Yeah. So basically, let's start with the 401k. That depends, of course, if you're employed. 401ks are employee-sponsored accounts. They have a limit of how much you got to put into it, of course, every year. Why? Because they are tax exempt, meaning that any money you put into the 401k and you invested in the 401k into the S&P 500 or in the technology index or in the total stock market index, all of that money, as it grows, it becomes tax-free as long as you retire with it. Of course, if you take it out before you're 59 years of age, then you get taxed the total amount. but if you leave it there after,
I did it when I left the Cal State San Bernardino. I was working as an employee there, and I had to move to LA. And I was only working. I've been working 2-3 years at Cal San Bernardino, and I moved to LA. I was like, dude, I'm broke. I'm making minimum wage. I'm making $15 an hour, living in a garage, with no insulation. I have no money. Well, the only thing that I knew, because I would get them in the mail, is like, oh, this is how much money you have in your 401k. And I remember I did the paperwork, and voila, lo and behold, like, hey, because you're not 59 and a half, there's a 10% tax.
Yeah.
State tax, and then there's a penalty tax, and you're like, at the end of it was like 25% gone.
Jesus. Yeah.
Pero bueno.
So, yeah, so that's the dangers of I mean, in a way it's good to have those accounts because you can have your money grow, but there's always a danger that you cannot use it unless you get less than what you put in the end if you take it out early. But of course, it is good to have if you need, money in your later years, and you need to, once you not graduate, but once you retire, then you gotta once you graduate from life,
No.
So once you graduate from life, then you can take it out and live in a comfortable way. Because the good thing is that money now is tax free. You didn't have to pay any penalties on it. And you can use it for whatever you want: medical expenses, traveling, daily routine of buying and selling food and stuff like that. So you can use it for anything. But yeah, it is a savings account in a way because you're saving for your retirement. And it is something that I wanted my parents to have because they benefit from it and they will retire soon. So they need that in their lives.
Yeah. And what about an IRA?
Yeah, so the IRAs, the good thing is, that they are not sponsored. They're not sponsored by an employee. So you as an individual can open one without having to be employed. You could be unemployed or self-employed and have an IRA. Compared to what a 401k is, you have to be employed by somebody that provides an IRA for you. So not every job is going to give you one, and you won't be able to apply for it if you don't have a job. So that approves for it. So that makes it more accessible to anybody in the U.S. You can open an account for free in any company like Charles Schwab, Fidelity, and even Robinhood has it now. Of course, you need to do your own research before opening any of these accounts. You have to make sure you love the platform, you like where it's going, and the future of it looks fine for you to put your money in there. Because in the end, that money is going to stay there until you retire, which is 50 years if you're 20, 30 years if you're 20. So you need to watch out where you're putting it. And
then what are the benefits of an IRA?
The same thing as a 401k. You're tax exempt. You have, you're available. You can put up to, depending on which IRA you get the traditional or the Roth. With the traditional, you put the money and you get a stipend at the end. Of course, if you meet the qualifications for the IRS, meaning you can put $6,000 every year, and you can get those $6,000 back in a stipend in your IRS, in your tax, tax redemption. Of course, you have to make a certain amount. I think 30,000 if you're.
Oh, I could get them as a tax deduction.
You can, if it's a traditional.
I talk to my accountant with this. I'm pretty sure he's explained it, but I again, the reason why we love your website, your Instagram, and I'm going to plug it in, Financial Predator, is because you simplify things. Like, okay, you know what? They're tax free. You can use them as a tax deduction if they're a traditional IRA versus a regular. Because then, gente nos confunden. You're just like, you know what? Especially Latinos, así somos. Okay, so that's good to know. Let's talk about the housing market. ¿Cómo la ves ahorita? Because a lot of people obviously in 2020 took advantage and started buying in the beginning of 2020, and like yourself, because you saw cheap homes. But then you saw this reverse where it was like, oh, shoot, an increase of value of home. And people were still buying at ridiculous values, but now it's kind of slowed down. And us millennials who haven't bought a home are like, wait, how much should I be saving up? Like, and then two, when is the right time?
Yeah, in a way, I mean, it all depended on what the Federal Reserve did back in 2020 due to, the emergency of the pandemic that we had. They had to find a way to stimulate the economy so that it wouldn't crash. And that's what they did. They lowered interest rates to zero. And that led what you could buy in pre-COVID, you could buy a home at a 5% interest rate, 4% interest rate, depending on your credit score, became 2%, 3% interest. So it was half or lower, or almost less than half than what you would have paid in interest just because of what the Federal Reserve did. And that's what many people took advantage on in 2020, 2021, and early 2022. And that's when I decided to also pull the trigger in the home, because if I did it then, compared to now, if I would have bought the same home today at the interest rates of today, I would be paying an extra $1,000 a month just in interest rates.
And that's not something you can't negotiate now, or like these banks or people will be like, nah.
Yeah, no, at this point they're set. You can try and negotiate a couple points here and there in lower interest rates, but you have to be an excellent credit score. You have to have a very high down payment, maybe more, close to 20%, if anything. And you have to be able to show that you can pay high amounts on a monthly basis. You have to get a lower term, so like a 10-year or 20-year instead of a 30-year mortgage.
Damn, just so I can get those same interest rates that even in the beginning or during the 2020. Basically. Wow. Okay, so let's talk about homes. What is your personal prediction for 2023 on home buying?
Yeah, this is one thing that I talked to you guys, of course, in the group chat, like what I can kind of see happening. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot predict what's going to happen, but I can kind of give an assessment on how interest rates are going. And as long as the Federal Reserve has these high interest rates, the amount of buyers will decrease. The amount of people with spending power will decrease, because as the interest rates go up, the credit card interest go up. The interest rates for buying a car go up. The interest rates for holding an investment go up. Or for holding a loan keep going up. So if you're somebody who has lots of loans that are variable interest, especially businesses by definition cannot get a fixed interest. Like, for example, if you're a real estate developer and you buy land, that land has a variable interest. It goes according to what the Federal Reserve says. So the more interest rates go up, these developers have to pay higher price for building a home or for holding that land. So that leads to developers having to, pull back of the market and be like, you know what, I'm not going to build a home, or I'm not going to buy this land, or I'm not going to buy these other homes to flip and renovate, because the amount of holding these homes becomes more expensive. And who knows if there's going to be a buyer at the end of the day once the home is built and once I've renovated the home enough to be able to sell it at market price, if anything, or at least of what I paid. So the chances of it that we can see a pullback in prices in homes and apartment and condos and all these things is going to be, it is pretty high. Of course, we need to wait what the Federal Reserve does, because they could change tune anytime and we can go back to lower interest rates. But until then, we can still see pain in the housing market.
What is things that we need to be looking forward this week?
This week, well, we have the FOMC meeting, which is when the Federal Reserve, all the officials of the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the U.S., they all get together and decide, are we going to keep on raising rates? Are we going to stay neutral? Or are we going to lower rates? And that is what's going to happen on Wednesday this coming week. And they're going to decide, and by not prediction, but by what people are thinking that may happen, and many economists think is going to happen, since we have a lower CPI print that happened back last month. If this CPI print that's coming, which is coming on Tuesday, and if it's also lower.
We're recording this on Saturday, but it's being released Tuesday.
Oh, yes. Oh, gotcha. Like it's today.
Hey, and you probably already heard it. Obviously, I'm usually release the episodes Tuesday at 8 p.m., but I'm going to make sure this episode is dropping if you're listening to it at 6 a.m. on Tuesday.
Oh, you should. Yeah, that's when it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So keep in mind the CPI number that was already released. Today, and then tomorrow, the federal Powell is speaking whether or not, or how much he's raising interest rates, because we know he's going to raise interest rates. We just don't know by how many basis points. If it's the same, which is 75 basis points that has been occurring these past couple of months, maybe I think like 2 or 3, or if he's going to drop it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's yeah, you got it on point. So that's so that's definitely, yeah, no, I'm telling you, and Jose, you share a lot of information to the people, which in the group chat they love, and everybody tells me, like, oh, I'm glad that everybody shares information and everybody builds off of each other, and that's the beauty of that group chat. So yeah, definitely, you pretty much are on point on that. So yeah, we are waiting on what of course Jerome Powell and his federal officials are going to decide. Is it still prudent to continue with the high interest rates? Because we're raising rates at the fastest and the highest pace we've ever done in the history of the United States. There's never been ever this fast raising of rates, or at this pace ever since raising rates became a thing, which was in the early 70s. So ever since then, this is the first time it's ever happened like this. So is it going to be 75? Is it going to be 50? And a lot of people are fighting. Well, it all depends on, of course, the today's CPI numbers. If the CPI number is lower than expectations, then we can see, if Jerome Powell go for that 50 basis point hike, which is going to start the pivot, or what people say, they call it the pivot of the Federal Reserve, when instead of following what they were saying they were doing before, they break from the trend and they now go to a lower expectation of what the terminal rate is going to be, which is when they end the interest rate hikes. So
we could see like a pivot in stocks as well increase, just because the trust in the government is like picking back up, and they're like, all right, you know what? We can start investing because it's now these interest rates are starting to slow down.
Yeah, you got it on point again. Basically. So basically if the Fed does the pivot, then the markets will pivot too. There's going to be this like euphoria, or at least this happiness that we're seeing this change from tune in the Federal Reserve. And stocks are going to go up, crypto is going to go up, bonds are going to, at least bond yields will come down, but bond prices will go up. And we can start seeing a little bit more of a resolution to what this bottom could be. Maybe we're reaching the bottom, or we already touched the bottom, or maybe there's more pain coming, because nobody knows what's going to happen 4 or 5 months from now, because the economy is still in flux. But at least in the short term, we're going to see these huge spike in prices, because this is what people are expecting, which is a lower interest rate hike and inflation to keep going down, because it all depends, of course, on CPI releasing today early and saying that we are lower than what we expect. Now, if the opposite does happen, if CPI is higher, we could see more pain in the short term as well as the long term, because that means that what the Federal Reserve is doing is not enough, and they're going to have to continue. And maybe if CPI is still higher than expectations, they could go still for 75 basis point hike and raise their terminal rate, and everything could crash again.
Okay. So last week, one thing that we saw was, for the past 2-3 weeks, the trend for stock prices was going up. So we were like, a lot of people were confident with their stocks, but then we saw, I think it was the jobless claims number, this is where I get confused. I don't know if it slowed down or it stayed the same, but can you explain why it is important for the government for the unemployment rate to be higher, right? Is it higher? Right?
Yeah, so they wanted it to be higher. So you got it right again. So I'm telling you, we need to start a scoreboard, and Jose's going to have point.
I swear my neurons hoy me están funcionando, because sometimes I text you all the time and I'm like, dude, is this means, or is this right? Because I swear, I don't know. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't.
No, you're good. You pretty much got it all the time. So just like how you say, we need in a way, employment to go down, because what they were saying and what pretty much what people are looking at the numbers and the data, there's more jobs available than there are workers. And when that is the thing, then in a way, workers have a little bit more power, and that's good. We want workers to have power, but we don't want them to become too powerful to that there is a wage price spiral. There we go. The wage price spiral. And what that is wages keep going up, and that leads people to have more money where they can buy more things. And that leads, since people are buying more things, that leads to inflation and a shortage of products that in a way, works as supply and demand. The less products there are, the higher prices are going to be. And that's what the Federal Reserve needs to fight and destroy in order to kill inflation, in order to end it. And in a way, it's a bad thing that we're going to see more unemployment, and because that's what's causing higher rates are causing higher unemployment, because all of these companies, they have loans, they have debts, they have all these investments that are losing value, and they have to pay higher rates in interest, or they have to pay more in order to maintain those loans. And that's leading them to lose revenue. That's leading them to lose the bottom line. And that's causing all these businesses to, have to liquidate employees. So what they want to do is keep raising rates to the point where we are at least a 4.5 unemployment in the U.S. Right now, currently, we are at 3.6, 3.7, according to the last jobs number. Yeah. But we did see that that employees are still getting raises. And that's what the Federal Reserve doesn't want to see. And that's why the stock market fell a little bit, just like how you mentioned, where we saw this really nice uptrend in the stock market, in the S&P and the stocks. And then all of a sudden we hit a wall and started coming down again. And that's because of that employees number and unemployment number that was higher. No, the employment was lower than expected, but the actual jobs were paying more than expected. So we saw this little, that was not what we wanted to see.
Yeah, okay. I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the essentials. So if somebody doesn't know anything about the stock market, if people want to start investing or getting a little bit more control of their money, your top 5 or top 3 tips, just because I want to wrap it up. Ya sé que tienes tu tiempo, but before you give us your tips, I know I've been mentioning the financial predator a lot, but his actual Instagram is Moris Galvez FP. So you guys can go and follow him, because he has really great information. And you're probably like, oh, pero a lo mejor no me interesa todo esto del dinero, or I just don't want to get saturated. I kid you not, he simplifies the things, and just by the mere following, de seguro te va a aparecer uno de sus videos, and maybe you won't see all of them, but maybe you'll see one, and that one is probably going to be the one that will motivate you to take financial control of your life, because it is important that you start doing it now, and it's never too late. Entonces no me vengas que digas, al menos que tengas 99 años, entonces nah, ahí ya no te puedo ayudar, amigo. But definitely Moris Galvez FP. But if somebody wants to get started to take control of their finances, what can they start doing?
Yeah, no. And I mean, I'm happy to be here. So we could be talking about this for hours. So it is in a way, it's one of my passions to talk about money. But if there's, if there is a couple of tips that I could give you, it's one, and it's one that I tell everybody is don't listen just to me. In a way, always get advice from other people that, are into finance, or are accountants, or are other people, our friends, other brothers like Eddie and everybody else, who has finance groups. That always listen to them in a way, because everybody has a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. I am not an expert. I've lost money sometimes in the stock market, and I've gained money in the stock market. So there's always like a tit for tat with crypto and stocks. But don't just listen to me. Get advice from as many people as possible. Talk to all the people that have an idea of what economy and businesses and housing, all these things, all these knowledges from different people, and you can start creating a profile or an idea of what you want your investing to be, and what kind of tolerance you have, and what kind of stocks you want to invest in. And of course, that's one. Then 2, I would say always research before you buy a stock or a cryptocurrency. We always see these, news or posts or people talking about certain stock or cryptocurrency. And, in the end, maybe they're wrong, maybe they're not. But from what I've seen and from the experience that I've seen, most of the stocks that a lot of the YouTubers have been talking about online and especially, the cryptocurrency era, or just a few months ago, we had one of the biggest crashes, which was FTX. I was one of the people that was telling, you could put your money in FTX. It looks safe. And a lot of people were fooled by what FTX was doing, I myself included, And that's when it comes to always do your own research, always find out if this is something that you want to put your money in. Don't just listen to anyone. Always find out if this is the right platform for you, if this is the right technique for you, if this is the right stuff for you. So always do your own research on that. And I think third, and this is the biggest one, I believe, it's, get informed and educated in the economy, because what's going to happen in the coming years, especially if things keep going the way that they are, we could have maybe one more rally to end the year. If a CPI is great and everything, but then we're going to start seeing the cracks. Then we might start seeing the cracks in the economy.
So 2023 is not going to be, or it's definitely going to be a transformative year in the stock market, housing market, and crypto market. So we're definitely going to see a lot of bleeding, probably hurting. I know I've talked to you about before on some of the stocks that I've had, and you're like, mortgage debt securities, obviously we may see a recession coming up, especially in the stock market, in the housing market. So maybe those won't be the most valuable stocks to currently have in 2023. I think I have an issue with, and maybe a lot of people do, and I'm learning, loving your stock so much or your portfolio so much that you're afraid to let it go, meaning to sell. Even though you're selling at a good price and you're selling at a capital gains, that is also sometimes hard. You're like, I've worked so hard for my 6 stocks in Tesla or in Apple. Even though I'm, at the end of the day, we're in the stock market to make money. So if we sell, if you built it once, you could build it again. So that's what I'm trying to slowly learn, or unlearn, to not fall in love with the stocks. Otra cosa que siempre nos has dicho, if you have debt, pay it all off, your credit card debt, your car debt, that way you are ready and able to, if the housing market crashes and if that's something that you're looking into, to be prepared for.
Yeah, no, that is, and it's one of the dangers that we as a country going into a recession are in danger of, having too much debt. And we are maybe the most indebted country when it comes to per capita in credit cards. So yeah,
I'm like, hi, but no, I only have $600 in credit card debt.
No, you're fine. As long as you pay it every month and you get rid of them as soon as you can, then you're fine. I use credit cards for everything, and it's, I get points with them. I'm able to travel with them. So they're not bad. They are bad if you leave that money there and you miss the payments. Yeah. So you just got to learn to use them correctly, and you're fine. They're not evil. You just got to learn to use them correctly, because we are going to see. Yeah.
Sorry, I just got the Amex Platinum, and everybody was, everybody's like, what is it? What is it? And then they ask you how much is the annual fee? And you tell them the annual fee, $690. They're like, what? You're an idiot. What do you mean? And I'm like, hold up. Do you know of all the benefits that this card has? The points that you get back. And this year, obviously, I started my entertainment company, which is Echale Entertainment LLC. So it is also my business card.
By the way, I love it.
That's right. But it's also stuff that I do as a social media person, et cetera, et cetera. But I use it also as a business card. So that's where all my business transactions are at. Anyways, I'm doing all that. But yes, you have to learn how to use a credit card, or if not, it'll learn how to use you and abuse you.
Yeah, yeah, you'll be definitely abused by it because the thing is, if rates keep going up, credit card rates are gonna keep going up, and you're gonna be paying more and more and more in interest rates. I think right now we're paying 30% annually in a debt in a credit card, so it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah. And then finally, capital gains
Mhm.
versus loss. Because how does having crypto and how does having stocks affect my taxes at the end of the day? Because a lot of people are like, oh, no, quiero que me cobren en los taxes, en los impuestos.
Right.
Is that all into it? Because Uncle Sam always wants to cut, and we out here trying to knock Uncle Sam our hard work money.
Yeah, no, you want to try as much as you can to, of course, legally. You don't do it illegally, but to legally pay as less taxes as possible. Yeah. So the idea is that you can buy a stock, of course. You hold it for a long time, you sell it later, and you only pay taxes on the gains. So that is the same thing with cryptocurrency. Now, what you can do, and which is a lot of people do, is like you can buy a stock in a tax advantage account, like a 401k, IRA, health savings accounts. There's a bunch of them. And you don't have to pay taxes on the gains or the money you put in or anything. So at the end of the day, you can get that money tax free. But if you are into buying stocks in individual accounts, just want to make sure that the stock you're buying is at least, worth it enough to gain value, even if it has a dividend. You don't want to buy a stock that pays you a dividend or pays you a monthly dividend if it's going to keep going down through the years. That's one of the dangers that you want to watch out to. It could be a value trap. Because you're buying maybe a good stock that pays you, maybe $4 a year, but the stock goes down $3-4 every year for the next 4 to 5 years. So you're actually losing money, and then you're getting taxed on the dividend. So you're not actually getting that amount. So
how much do you get taxed on dividends?
I think it depends on the individual, but from what I remember, I think it's 20%. 20% of the dividend you get taxed on, depending on your bracket, of course.
So, okay. So per se, just going on that 20%, if I made $2,000 in dividends, I would have to pay $200 back to the IRS out of those $2,000.
You would be closer to 400, but yeah.
See, ves? That's why you're the math person.
No, you're good. You're good. No, you're good. You're good.
On my freaking board. Offer freaking.
No, you're good, but I mean, it all depends on your tax bracket, of course. If you make over 80%, I think because it counts as income. So any dividend, it counts as income, so you get taxed as income. So I guess if you make 40,000, you get 12% tax, I think. And if you make over 30,000 to 80, then you pay 15. Now, if you're over 100K, I think you paid over 20%. So yeah, so it all depends on your bracket.
And then can you offset your losses if you're like, let's say if I made $100,000 and that's where my bracket was, but I bought stocks but I sold them at a loss. Well, that difference, like, oh my God, I've already lost $4,000. Now, technically, I've made 96, right? Or
correct.
Is that how it works?
Yeah. So let's say you in capital gains. You're good. You're good. In capital gains, let's say the gains on the initial amount is 100,000. So that is what you would pay, or at least that would be the amount to count for in taxes. If you sell, let's say you put 100,000 and it became 200,000, that means you have 100,000 in gains. Now, if in another stock you have, just like you mentioned, you put 100,000 in that stock, but it becomes 80,000 later, you can sell that 80,000, and then you would only pay taxes on the 100 capital gains minus that 20,000 that you lost, so it becomes 80,000 later. So then you pretty much can only pay those 80,000. Those 80,000 in capital gains will count as a tax amount, or at least the tax will be checked.
So this last week, and maybe even December, well, not December 31st, but maybe the 29th, because that's the last day of the stock market, which is Friday, will be open because, well, no, 30, yeah. No.
Yeah, I don't know what the calendar looks like.
The 30th. I think the 30th, because the first is on a Sunday.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, if the 30th, yeah, because, Yeah, so the 30th is the last day. So you want to make those moves the last day because, of course, if you get to do it next year, then they don't account for 2022 taxes. You have to do it every year. You have to rebalance. I mean, this is one of the good things about rebalancing at the end of the year. You can find out which stocks have been down and which ones are up. You sell the ones that are down. You look at how much you have in the capital gains. You sell those, and that way you can cut your taxes to zero if it works. And you can even get some money back. Like, let's say the IRS every year. By the way, this is a law in the IRS. If you're an investor, every year, if you lose $3,000, you can get those $3,000 back as a IRS stipend. Of course, you have to, sell those stocks that are down and buy them a month later if you want to buy them again. If not, then you don't have to worry about it. But you can sell it today and buy it the 10th of January of next year again if you want to. But of course you have to wait a month for that to work. It's called the wash sale rule. You have to wait 30 days after selling the stock that you're down on in order to put that as your taxes as a loss, and you get those $3,000 back in your taxes.
Well, there's so many layers that we could keep peeling when it comes to money, when it comes to talking about the economy. I definitely don't want to bombard everybody with a lot of information, and I definitely want to push them more to your page, which is Moris Galvez FP on Instagram. You also have TikTok, YouTube? What else? Plug yourself in.
Nice. Yeah. So we also have, it's just me but I am also the producer, the editor, and the economist. But I count myself as a team at this point. But yeah, we also have TikTok, which is the same one, Moris Galvez FP, Moris Galvez FP, because people sometimes think I have two R's in my name, but I only have one R. Yeah. I know many people, and it actually is the norm in my name to have two R's, but I only have one. How my parents decided to write it in my birth certificate. But and we also have a YouTube, which is Finance Spreader. You can find me as Finance Spreader right there. And I'm still uploading more videos. Of course, I'm working on a set of videos to teach people the basics on options, which that's another thing that there's some more layers to peel. Yeah, so that's another thing. And of course, I have an entertainment page. Like, I'm trying to see if we can start like stories and confessions in Spanish. So for todos los que hablan español, there's Tell Me Chisme, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. But yeah, that's pretty much that's all for me.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this is probably one of many conversations that we're going to have here on the podcast, just because I definitely think in our comunidad, there needs to be more financial awareness. And there's a lot of people like yourself, like Eddie, like Luz, from In Luz We Trust, who are doing the work of God, literally teaching our comunidad about money management. What was I going to say? If anybody is listening, if they have specific questions, or if they would like us to do another episode answering specific questions, please let us know. Mándanos un mensaje, whether it be at Échale Podcast on Instagram or at Moris Galvez FP, and then we'll definitely do another episode and just answering questions, specific questions, because I think it is important. Like I said, I want to reiterate, no hay necesidad de ser pobre.
No, you don't.
Or broke, but that doesn't mean we gotta die broke.
Yeah, no, you could be born broke, but people say it's up to you to not die broke. So, yeah.
Sí, bueno, pero muchísimas gracias, Moris, por Moris. Puedo decir Morris.
No, No, thank you so much, Jose, for plugging me in the podcast and for being there. We've known each other for years, actually, and I'm happy you've reached so much. I'm happy how you're going out there and getting it, bro, and like it's insane seeing you grow and succeed at doing it. It's inspiring, and I pretty much, in a way, I look up to you in that way.
Thank you, brother. And I think it's the opposite. You know what? Like, we're both hustling, but I definitely admire you as well. And I look up to you
No,
because
thank you.
obviamente tú ves acá, working entertainment and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think anybody working in any sector wants to be financially independent. And when I think of financially independent people, I think about you, I think about Eddie, and I'm pretty sure there's still things that you would wish to improve or you want to improve on. And you probably look up to other people and see where they're at, and you're trying to reach those goals. So thank you for inspiring us who are listening, who follow you, because we definitely look at you and at Eddie and at Luz as people, mentors in this field, and who we trust, who we know are not perfect, but who we know are going to lead us in the direction that we want to go.
No, thank you. And I mean, those are awesome kind of words, bro. Definitely. And we're both working hard at this, and it's definitely hard. It's not easy, but we're going to get there. And I mean, it's an inspiration for people to, like, in a way, like, see that not people that look like them, cause we're, like, we're both Latino, brown Latinos. We're trying to make our way in the USA. And hopefully, this, like, if I wish my 9-year-old self would have seen me, and I feel like, I can do lots of things. And I bet the same with you. Like, you think about your age and you're like, dang, yeah, my kid, if I was a kid, I would love to see me up there.
And I can't wait to teach my kids in the future and be like, yo, there's a chiquito hijo de la chingada of money.
Desmadrosos desde chiquitos,
Those are activos, and they'll know how to invest money. I'm going to charge, you said I'm going to charge them rent, just so they know what that means. And it'll probably go towards like their savings account to college or a college fund or an IRA for them or something like that. Pero they know, like, en esta vida se ganan las cosas. En esta vida, I'm Uncle Sam in the household, so I'm always want a piece of that cut. I'm paying you to clean your room $1, but I'm gonna want 25 cents.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's actually a good, smart idea. Actually, I saw this TikTok of somebody saying, you know what? I'm for my kids, as a retirement, I'm gonna buy them a home. They won't live in it. I'll rent it out. And then once they graduate from high school, if they graduate and they graduate with good grades, I'm gonna give it to them as their 529 plan. They'll be able to live in it and then rent it out to people or whoever. And then that will be their college fund. So they'll be able to take a loan on the home and go to school or do whatever they want to do. So that's another idea. And that's what I was thinking of doing if my kids, if I have kids, who knows at this point. Yeah. My girlfriend wants to have kids. We'll see.
Yeah. Pero once again, muchísimas gracias. Check them out. Moris Galvez FP, Moris Galvez FP on Instagram. Thank you so much, hermano.
No, thank you, Jose.
In the next episode.
Thank you for everything. I'm happy to be here and happy to talk to you. And every single time is a pleasure.
Dale. Buenos vidrios.
Take care, everybody.
All right. I'm just going to stop.